does Jesus mean when he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit"? Matthew 5:3. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Virtually most commentators, if you take a look, they're going to say this. They're going to say something like this. Here's a quote from one. This means that God's blessing and salvation comes to those who acknowledge their spiritual bankruptcy. It means to see that you're deeply in debt to God and you have no ability to even begin to redeem yourself. God's free generosity to you at infinite cost to him was what saved you. Okay? What does it mean to be poor in spirit? It means you know that you are in infinite debt. You could never have gotten yourself out of debt, and the only reason why you are saved, spiritually speaking, is God came in and intervened and gave you his free charity and just right? Got it. Now, what does that mean? If you're poor in spirit, what happens when you actually find an economically and materially poor person? See, if you're spiritually poor in spirit because you understand the doctrine of justification by faith, what happens when you see a materially poor person? Are you going to say, "Hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps"? If Jesus had said that to you, you'd be in hell. Are you going to say, "Well, I don't mind helping some of the poor, but I only want to help the deserving poor. I only want to help the poor that I feel like didn't contribute to getting themselves into this mess"? But if Jesus had looked over the lip of heaven and said, "I'm only going to give my blood to the deserving poor," he could have saved himself a trip. There isn't anybody like that down here. And when you hear that in your heart, when you become poor in spirit, then the way you treat the materially and economically poor is with no condescension at all. When you look at them, you know you're looking in a mirror. Now, what if you don't believe the doctrine of justification by faith? What if you say, the whole idea of the holiness of God and the wrath of God and the justice of God having to be appeased, the justification by faith alone really makes the justice of God important. Well, a lot of people say, I don't believe God does that. I believe God loves people, and I don't believe. And I think if I live a good enough life, God will accept me. And I believe I've tried very hard to live a good enough life, and I believe God should accept me, and he ought to bless me and answer my prayers. You see, that's how I see things. Okay, maybe that's how you see things. You don't like justification by faith. You believe that God isn't like that. He's not that angry. I've lived a pretty good life. You're middle class in spirit. You know what that means? It means you believe that you've earned a certain standing with God through your hard work. In your spirit, you're middle class. You say, I've worked hard and I deserve what I get. And if you're middle class in spirit, first of all, you're lost. And secondly, you're going to be condescending toward the poor. Doctrine of justification by faith just takes that out of you. It just scours it out of you. And you lose that condescension.